You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's the most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. And my guests this morning are seated and joining us also via Zoom as well. I have here in the studio, right to my immediate left, is Kofi Bento, Rebel, lawyer and senior vice president, Imani Africa. Also here in the studio and right by Kofi is Nana Ejay Bafwewa, who is MP Mensha South Vice Chairman, Subsidiary Legislation and Member, Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committees of Parliament. Then we have Abdul Nasser Alidu, Head of Strategy and Programs, 24-hour Secretariat. Vera Abba-Ado, Programs Officer, CDD Ghana, Elections, Rule of Law, and Anti-Corruption. And later we will be joined by some other guests to assist us in this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for making time to join us here on Newsfile.
Good morning.
Right. So as we have introduced, and as many of you may be aware, Ablekuma North is the constituency where results have still not been declared. There's no declaration of the results after the elections in December. So 7 months without an MP. And we understood that the problem had been because the EC only needed police protection to be able to declare those results. As we understand, the polling stations affected 19 out of 37 polling stations. The 19 scanned results used for the collation were approved by the NPP and NDC, but not verified by EC's presiding officers. 37 pink sheets to collate results were scanned copies of the NPP. The problems that happened in that constituency, like a couple other of the constituencies. EC's collation center was besieged, leaving pink sheets destroyed. There was a meeting on July 1 with NDC and the NPP in attendance. And as we understand, the NDC's position was what they have insisted for a very long time: rerun in all 37 polling stations, because the pink sheets used to collate the results were provided by the NPP. The NPP's position is that only 3 polling station results need to be collated and a winner declared, because NDC verified the scanned results they presented. So this is where we are. The EC appeared before Parliament a couple of weeks ago, and it was asked, speaking through its one of its deputies, Eric Bosman Asari, what was the stumbling block? He narrowed it down to lack of security protection. Remember, the NPP had also been to the IGP to petition the IGP to get security to help in the process. So what happened? It seems like a U-turn to many. And all sorts of allegations are being made in this regard. Now, let's hear Bosman Asari. And then 2 days ago, the matter was raised on the floor of Parliament. We hear Afenyo Marking, we hear Mahama Yarga, and a couple others.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Commission strongly believes that for the processes that have gone on so far, if we go back to the good people of this country that we are abolishing everything, it will not be good for our democracy. It will not be good for our democracy. Thank you. So let's allow the process to continue. Thank you.
The Deputy Chair, Dr. Bosman, sitting in for his boss, told us that all they need is security to enable them finish the 3 polling stations. I ask a question: what has changed? Mr. Speaker, we should be careful as a democracy, how we are managing this democracy. Mr. Speaker, today we have a member in this chamber from Domi Kwabenya because when it was left with some few polling stations, EC relied on tally cards. Aden, Michael Kwe Jr., Onu di onye nipa, onye Ghanini. Michael Kwe Jr. protested, but he did not protest with violence. He did not carry his constituent to the EC Collation Center. He expressed his disagreement in a civil way. Today, we have our colleague Akurugu in with us because EC used tally cards to complete the collation process. And when it is clear that the EC was on course to complete this process, we are being told today that there's going to be rerun of some constituencies. It is unfair. It is unjust. Is it the case, and I don't want to believe that that is the case, that the recent public comment by some senior politicians is what is compelling EC, perhaps to secure their job? They want to succumb to the whims and caprices of certain extremists or certain hardliners. It is not fair. Maybe today this thing it is helping some other people. Tomorrow it may be their turn. EC must come here and brief us why, in spite of their being unequivocal, they have now changed course. We must not allow this. So, Mr. Speaker, I expect that on issue 1, next week, the EC will be programmed to come and brief the House. The Electoral Commission is saying that their own presiding officers did not verify the 19 polling stations. And because their presiding officers did not verify the 19 polling stations, they don't think that those polling station results should be used. And that is why they are deciding to rerun those 19 polling stations. You made reference to the presentations made by the EC in this House. If you recall, after the EC's presentation, I drew the attention to the fact that the matter in contention was the issue of verification of the pink sheets, the scanned ones, and that their own presiding officers did not verify the pink sheets. And that day he was calling on this House to help them to have security to collect the results. And I said that for this House to help you, this House has to verify that what you are telling us is true. And I know because everything happened on television and the presiding officers did not verify those pink sheets. So if you want us to help you, we will conduct an inquiry in this House. And if we establish that your own presiding officers verify those pink sheets, then we will direct the police to come and provide you with the protection you need to collect the results. This is what has made them to go back, think over it, and now decide that they have to come clean on the fact that their own presiding officers did not verify the scanned pink sheets. And if the scanned pink sheets were not verified by their own presiding officers, on what basis should that be used? That is why they are calling for a rerun of those 19 polling stations. I don't know why you are afraid. Why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? So please let us not try to politicize this and say that because recently the national chairman of one political party made a statement, the EC is intimidated. No, it's just fair and reasonable that if their own officer did not verify those pink sheets, that they should rerun those polling stations.
Right. So let me begin with I'll let Kofi Bento wait. I'll let him wait. And I'm going to hear from my other guests before I get to him. So let's begin with Alido. What's your understanding?
Person with the least knowledge about this.
You have very little knowledge around this issue.
Yes, but I would.
You are here mainly because of the 24-hour economy.
Yes.
Okay, but let's hear what you know and what you think about a rerun, if that is not the best option to resolving this issue permanently.
All right, so there are two things that for me come to mind when I listen, because I've been listening to some of the commentary since this started. And my understanding of the issue is that there were 62 polling stations whose results were outstanding. The EC says they've been able to verify almost all of them, and only 19 are outstanding, which they cannot verify. And so they want to do a rerun of the election. Now, the MPP, on the other hand, is saying a rerun is not necessary. We have our pink sheets, and you can use our pink sheets to verify it. And that the EC's decision to rerun it is because the EC is afraid of the NDC, because the NDC is in power right now.
And Johnson Esi only a week ago issued a threat. Was it really a threat that the EC?
Yeah, but for me that brings to fore a very fundamental question about the Electoral Commission itself, because the NDC in 2020, the 2020 election, the NDC basically claimed we won the election in 2020, and that the EC, through some shenanigans, managed to change the results and give it to the MPP. At that time, the MPP's refrain was that the Electoral Commission is completely independent. They are doing their own thing. Nobody can influence them in the things that they do, and so we need to respect what the EC says. Today, the EC makes a decision, and the same MPP says the decision that the Electoral Commission is making is because they are afraid of General Mosquito and they are afraid of the MPP. The question that for me brings to mind is our EC then truly independent? Is there something else that the rest of us don't know, that the politician knows? And that's then, are there certain reforms that we need within the electoral laws to ensure that our Electoral Commission is truly independent, if that's what they say? Beyond that, I think the fair thing needs to be done. If the issue is that we cannot verify results, then let's do a rerun. Let's do a recount if we can do a recount. If a recount is not acceptable, then let's do the rerun and ensure that fairness prevails. That, for me, is my position.
What does the fact that the EC has been insistent, and that's why we have come 7 months without an MP for Ablekuma North, has been insistent that the process is credible and that all they needed was security protection to declare the results. Then suddenly, they say we must do a rerun for these polling stations.
What I understand, and I've read I tried to get a bit more information about this. What I've read in a few other places was that even within the AC, there was no alignment on how to deal with this. Okay, because the director of elections makes a decision, and then the director of training comes in and contradicts that decision and makes a different decision on how to approach this. So even within the EC, there hasn't been alignment on how to deal with this. So you can't necessarily say the EC insists that all they need is security. And so why don't we just provide them this? It's the same EC that comes back and says, yes, we have now been able to verify 62. We cannot verify 19 of them. We will need to do a rerun.
They have said that since 6 months ago. So why didn't they say 6 months ago that a rerun, which the NDC was always asking for? Why didn't they agree with that only today?
The truth is,
they were in Parliament only last 2 weeks ago and insisted that all they needed was security.
So let me put it this way. I cannot hold brief for the EC. But 6 months ago, there were 62 outstanding results. Today, there are 19. It could be that they've managed to verify a lot of them, and these are the ones they cannot verify. And this one is not about security. It's about actually getting to what the results are. But like I say, I cannot hold brief for them. They understand their processes. They are the ones that went through it. But the circumstances 6 months ago are not the same as today.
Okay.
We are not doing a rerun of 62. They are doing a rerun of 19. So perhaps something has changed within the EC itself, and that's why they've changed their mind.
Vera, you have been following this at the CDD. You have been concerned about the fact that Ablekuma North has not had its MP and the potential of trouble in that area. What do you make of this decision? Is it the path to a fair resolution?
This as well. So, for me, I think the inconsistencies from the Electoral Commission is not helping matters. The alternative arrangements we are using with the scanned copies, these are not based on any law or rules or protocol. It's based on building consensus with the parties. And from the Electoral Commission, there was some consensus to recollate this. But if you are not able to build consensus, then it means that something. Remember, the High Court actually ordered the Electoral Commission to go back and recollate the Ablekuma North elections. So if you are not able to build consensus, then it means that you have to go back to the same court for direction instead of coming back to say that we need to go and rerun the elections. And even the timelines they have given, I think that is actually not even fair. The IPAC meeting that the Electoral Commission presser says that the parties have come to agreement. You issue a presser and the next moment the New Patriotic Party says we did not agree to that. It raises also a question about how issues and agreements at IPAC are being documented. Such important situation like this, it's important to bring up stakeholders to this meeting. So again, who else was in the room? When we had this issue with voters register, we saw Electoral Commission bringing up stakeholders, other CSOs were there, Kodio was there, CDD was in the room. And at a point, the IPAC meeting was even live. Every Ghanaian had opportunity to know what is happening there. So such important conversation or decision, I think the EC, you would have thought that the EC would have adopted such approach of transparency going forward to see how this process. So again, they go into a meeting and then the EC says there was agreement and then the NPP says no, there was no agreement. They didn't agree to that. So who is telling us the truth? You see, so if you go back and run the election without any rules or protocol, you set some precedent that you may not be able to follow. So I really think the EC should have gone back to the High Court. That High Court says go back and collect the 62 polling stations remaining. If you are not able to recollect all you have outstanding, you go back to the same court and say that we are not able to build consensus, and so you seek for direction. I think that even the timeline that were given, if you want to even run the election, just say you were able to build consensus, I think it was about 7-8 days. You have to get the candidates and parties need to prepare for it. If you want observers, citizens groups to also observe, they may also have to prepare, train and deploy the security. You need to even do some public education as well. Which polling stations, the Ablekuma North constituencies must know that these are the areas, what happened, which polling station are we running elections. So I think that the EC is actually not helping matters. And if we are not able to build consensus, then it means you have to go back to court. You can't just take this decision. At one point, you say you just need security, and another point, you come back and say you are going to rerun election. And this is a very important matter that I thought EC should have not come to issue us with this decision, and then another party have to go to court to stop the process, especially when this arrangement is not based on any law. It means that anybody at all could go to court and stop the process. And it's long overdue that you would have thought that the EC would do more consultation.
Well, what law do you want? The EC has power under the CI to determine that because of certain developments in an election, they will do a rerun, either for the entire constituency or a portion of the constituency. They need to declare the winner. And they have been unable, together with the parties, to resolve the problem 7 months on. If they say, now let's go do a rerun partially in partial parts of the place, wouldn't you rather encourage the two parties that this is how the matter is resolved once and for all in a most transparent and fair way?
Samson, is fair. It's just that it's the electoral commission who's not helping the issues. At one point, you tell us that you are fine. The only thing you need is security to make sure you recollect. And so I think the U-turn, like you said, is what is not helping. So you have to be consistent with whatever decision that you take. And again, we also remember that the issue was taken to the High Court. You see, when the court comes in, the court gave a direction, go back and collate. And so you go back and collect, you are not able to finish up the process. You don't have the pink sheets. At one point, they told us the NDC had agreed to use the scanned copies from the NPP. So there was some consensus. Later, they said no.
But the matter of the court was done. The court in our parlance, we say, is functus officio. What the court did was make an order for them to go and do what they had to do. They don't go back and report to the court. They are done.
It's not to report to them, Samson. It means, see, you don't wait for the parties themselves to even take the matter to court. Now, the NPP is in court. The EC itself could say that, we had an order from court. It's done. We wanted to recollate, but we are not able to do it. We're not able to make consensus. So you need direction. You see, getting direction at that level, you don't have to take for granted it's just one constituency and some few polling stations. If we set the precedent well, some other constituencies, they had to still use some other alternative arrangements, the scanned copies and all of that. So these are things that are not based on any laws or regulation to say that when recollation, in fact, it's recollation. We don't have anything on recollation and recollation. This is a gap that we have to fill. And so if there's a matter like this and as important
your other complaint is that Friday, July 11 is too short. Is that it?
Yeah, so I think so. You see, Samson, the time the EC gave us, the information came in on the 2nd, and you said 11 people should go in. I thought it's too short. And maybe going forward, I think one of the things we've been talking about is the electronic transmission of polling station results directly to the national level. So for EC to not be able to transmit polling station results, people have gone out their numbers to vote. Elections has been declared at the polling station, and then going back to run the elections again, which is an issue. It means that we have to take some of these recommendations we've been saying over some time now, that we do not have to pull everything together to be able to declare it. And a public accessible means, other countries are doing it, that you cannot have access to polling station results. And so I think that consensus is important in this matter. So when you are not able to build consensus, you don't go ahead and run the election. And we thought that by now, if the EC was coming to tell us the direction, there would have been some consensus building being done. So now the MPP is in court. What do? It means that this issue is likely to drag on. For how many months are we likely to go that will not have a member of parliament?
Thank you. Hold on there for me. So, Bafo, I like us to begin on a quick note before I give you the opportunity to speak. The NPP is in court.
We are going to court
on Monday, or you have already filed on Thursday?
My update is that we are going to court. What step we have taken since yet to come to my attention. But as you know, going to court involves drafting processes, and being informed in terms
We're told that lawyers have been instructed to do what they have to do.
Exactly.
Right. So 7 months on, if you go to court again, you're likely to drag this. Don't you want a quick process that brings this matter to an end? Because if it's a rerun of only a few polling stations, even if it were a rerun of the entire constituency, as some people will say, that gives you the best opportunity to show to the people that you actually won.
It also gives, if the NDC, thank you very much, Samson, I am always worried when state institutions are caught up in the situation, particularly those that our democracy very much relies upon, the sustainability of our democracy very much relies upon, are caught up in the situation. I really get worried because I want to see the growth of these institutions, especially against the backdrop of the exhibited intention of the NDC, which found expression recently in an interview on this, in your station, on another program, by the chairman of the NDC, that the EC, the top 3 arrowheads at the EC must go. And so when they are caught up in the situation, I really get worried. And it appears to me that the EC has shot themselves in the foot. And, as it is, bound themselves, handed themselves over to the NDC as things stand now. Now, you may want to appreciate this by going into the chronology of events. If we cast our minds back, there's a court order for the EC to complete coalition. Sometimes there's a confusion where people think that the EC was ordered to do recoalition. No, it was to complete coalition. Now, following that order, or prior to that order being made, the position captured by the EC in its sworn affidavit before the court in answer to the application before the court, which was an application for mandamus, was that all they need is security to do coalition. All they need is security. I remember I was in court. The EC's lawyer, Mr. Justin Amenuvo, said, we are done with the elections. By law, we are supposed to complete coalition. And all we need is security to complete coalition. He's a man of few words when it comes to his courtroom advocacy. And so you could capture his advocacy in 3 sentences. We are done with the elections. All we need is security to enable us complete coalition. And so they've been consistent. Then 17th of January, the EC again issued a press statement. And I'll, very respectfully, with your leave, I will take you through it. And it's titled Press Release, Update on the Collation of Polling Station Results for Ablekuma North Constituency, dated 17 January 2025. The Electoral Commission wishes to bring to the attention of the general public that following the order of the High Court, 4th January 2025, directing the Commission to continue the collation of polling station results and declare winners of the 4 outstanding parliamentary elections. The only constituency still outstanding is Ablekuma North. It is instructive to state that the order of the High Court mandated the Ghana Police to provide the Electoral Commission security to conduct the collation of the polling station results for the outstanding constituencies. Samson, this is where I find very important and for our discourse. It says the collation of the polling station results for Ablekuma North took place following the court order on the 8th of January 2025 at the old head office of the commission. However, the exercise was not completed because 3 out of the 281 polling station results were outstanding. This is the press release the EC put out there. Consistently, the EC never raised any issue about 19 polling stations. In fact, a letter written by the NPP to the Electoral Commission dated 3rd of June 2025, requesting compliance with the court order by completing the coalition. The EC, in its response dated 11th of June 2025, affirmed its commitment to the court's order to complete coalition, proceeded to state, again in that letter, that out of the 281 polling stations, there were only 3 polling stations outstanding. Prior to this letter, as you repeated on the show this morning, one of the deputy commissioners, Mr. Bosman Asare, had also come to Parliament.
Repeated that.
Three
was
on oath. On oath.
Okay.
So how did 3 transmogrified into 19? How?
Even at that point, they still were unable to proceed because, as he said, they needed security. And it appears they wanted to get more consensus and they didn't get. Is this...
If you want to do negotiated settlement, it is different from coming up with contrary facts. They are two distinct. They are distinct. If it is the case that as a result of the stalemate, which in my humble view highlights the weaknesses within our system, right? And students of political science and constitutional law may take it up. How, notwithstanding the powers of the police in our laws, the extent of executive powers may actually constrain it. Those are academic things that we may want to examine in the classroom with the greatest of respect. But what it is really is that the EC has played in the hands of the NDC. As to what they want to do to them, only God knows. But they have played it into their hands. Because, Samson, you can, as a state institution, nothing stops you from leading a negotiated settlement. Nothing stops you from calling the parties prior to the meeting, even reaching out to them, right, separately before the meeting.
But you have both taken an entrenched, position.
You can always negotiate. You cannot. Politics is about consensus building. It's about negotiations. It's about always rising above, those very respectfully below and showing leadership. And I've said on other platforms that somebody like Mr. Siedun Ketia, rather than attacking the EC, stands in that position, given his extensive experience on our political plane, to lead negotiations and show leadership. And so we can always get third parties with extensive experience in this country who have led difficult negotiations even outside of this country to resolve this matter. That is different. But when you do a U-turn, that is serious.
So is it a U-turn? Is it unilateral? Is it that the two parties did not eventually agree to this before the EC came out with the announcement?
From where I sit, it is obvious the New Patriotic Party did not agree to it prior to the EC's announcement. That's the first point in response to your answer. The second point is that I may have used the phrase, if you like, U-turn, but it may not even be a U-turn. It's the EC coming up with something different after a consistent position for the last 7 months. As to how it came up with that, clearly, very respectfully, I am careful not to use certain words because I still want us to develop our democratic institutions. But it is obvious that the EC is cooking up something.
Mahama Yaga is asking a question. What are you afraid of?
We are not afraid of anything.
Then go for the rerun.
It's not about, my brother, it's not about going for a rerun. It's about developing principles and values in our democratic space.
Bosman Asare had actually said in Parliament that if they allowed a rerun, in future it will be difficult because some people can decide to deliberately disrupt the process, damage one or two pin sheets, and insist that there should be a rerun.
So it's about developing principles. That's how nations are developed.
When you marched to the IGP on the 4th of June, you gave him a petition asking that he should provide the security. Did you get an answer to that?
We are yet to get an answer. And that is what I mean of the highlights within our democratic, what political scientists may take up in terms of the constraints within our democratic space. The extent of power of the police vis-a-vis the state power, the executive, and the influence of ruling political parties. It's a whole thesis that we may want to.
By the 16th of June, your colleague and Minister for the Interior on the floor of Parliament had indicated what should be the answer, that there was some pending process in the Supreme Court which disallowed them, the security task force, from going to provide the security that you were calling for.
So the rerun, does it not compromise the position the Interior Minister expressed on the floor of Parliament? Clearly, there's lack of candor in this whole thing. There's lack of candor. But we need to be careful. I don't think that we should allow politicians to only own this process, because it does appear that we seem to have trusted our politicians with so much that we look in isolation and think that they are going to do right by us. I'm a politician, but I keep saying we need to get the involvement of everybody. I am happy that Kofi Bentel of Imani is here, and they need to also get involved. There's the need for an arbiter or a mediator in this whole thing, because clearly the EC itself is buckling under pressure, and that doesn't help.
Okay.
I don't want to use words such as integrity issues. I don't want to use words such as trust issues, because I want to still maintain confidence in the EC and not give the NDC enough power, right, to remove the EC like they intend to.
Okay.
But we need to be careful.
Let's find out what Kofi will say now. How is he going to structure this discussion? Because he has a way of doing it. The NDC's parliamentary candidate who claimed victory, the NPP candidate also claimed victory. The NDC's Rabna Obing says, this isn't our heart's desire, but it is only fair for them to do this. I believe it is God's way of preventing chaos in Ablekuma North and Ghana at large. The party leadership has engaged us and urged us to cooperate with the process, so we accept it. Shouldn't this be the language the MPP should be speaking?
Absolutely not. And please don't bring God into these things. He gave us a brain. He expects us to use it. He created an earth and put all these things in it. And today we are doing all kinds of fantastic things. Somebody can take a hat from somebody else, put it in another person, sew it up, and send the person walking. So God has given us enough to handle our issues. This is not about that. There are a few times that you agree entirely with someone, and I'll get to that, because we agree with us, you didn't get here. And you need to note that Imani's position is not recent. We've been sounding the warning about the EC for about 10 years, and specifically about this EC. So if you say I should frame it, this is how I look at it from a point of view of an analyst who has been looking at this institution. I have taken them to court and won. They refused to implement it. We have taken them to Shraj. We have challenged them on the figures. We've been ridiculed, etc. We've maintained our position. Today, people are seeing what we are talking about. The politicians haven't changed. The political parties haven't changed. Okay? And you can expect that they will fight for what, for whatever is worth. Because
when you say you agree with the NDC chairman.
Yes, I agree.
He says they are not fit for purpose. The first three of them, they should be removed.
We agree. I'll come there. So I'm framing it. And I'm starting by saying there's a history, as an EC and things we've been saying. Here, you have a situation where you have what is called catastrophic failure. Catastrophic failure is where I give you every resource you need to do something for me, which is simple enough for you to be able to do with your competence and the resources I've given you, and you fail totally. That's what we've gotten. When you have catastrophic failure, it is either an unwillingness to do the job or incompetence to do so. And I said, okay, I said so. He said, this EC is not fit for purpose. They are either unwilling to do the job or incompetent. I think they are incompetent. They have shown it over and over again. For the first time in our lives, after 30-something years of a democracy, we had SAL go for 4 years without representation. Today, we have an empty seat. All right? Now, go to the facts to show that they are incompetent. Okay? You have a statement where they've said, okay, I won't read it again. They've said that we have 3 problems. We need security to go and fix it. Under oath in the court. When you have those facts under oath in the court, you stick to them. Why have they changed it? And you know what? When you change things like this and you just decide you are going to, shift positions, serious matters like this, if we were in a situation where they could be fired, they should have been fired long ago. And if they were not fired, it would be the irresponsibility of the person who should have fired them. But here we have a constitution where they cannot ordinarily be fired. That's why I agree with the student here. Listen, I think all the 3 should go. They should resign. If they don't resign, this is one of the few cases, in fact, the only case I remember. We had our issues concerning the EC before this present EC. There were some issues during Charlotte's time. We engaged there. She was working on some of them, and then she went. In this particular case, in Charlotte's case, I wasn't happy with the removal of Charlotte and the way it went, because we predicted that if this goes this way, then every politician will come and they will keep removing people. In this case, I will be happy if they move to remove all the 3. And this is not the first time I'm saying so. Because we've had this catastrophic failure, and again, because of time, look, if you assemble the facts as we have them, okay, what happened in Ablekuma North? They came out and said...
Just a second, staying with the remove them thing. I thought you had joined us on the campaign that we need to refine the law so that not every mistake or error or misconduct of such officers must lead to removal.
Yes.
They should, like all of us, when we take a misstep somehow, somewhat in our places of employment, we may get a reprimand, we may get a suspension, we may get some punishment, but not the ultimate removal.
I said, in all the other cases, we have been against it. So in that sense, I agree with you. And that position still remains. But I also said that this is the one case where there is no room for reprimand or whatever it is. And this is the one case where consistently this group has shown themselves incompetent and unwilling. And this is the one case where this same group, after all, I don't have the time to go through the litany of things, but here you have a situation where they have gone to court under oath and sworn that this is the problem they have. Then they come back and they shift the position. This one group is not credible. They are not competent. They should go. And I said, they should resign. That's the easiest way. If you don't know your job, leave it. But if they don't resign, they should be removed. Look, this country is more important. I was going to make the point before you came that if you assemble...
The same point.
The same point. If you assemble the facts of Ablekuma North, call 5 SHS students and assemble the facts, they will unanimously tell you that the EC is at fault. This is a matter of incompetence. And if you have this level of catastrophic failure, which is so obvious, even from court documents, why are we jumping?
Can I get a consistency in your advocacy on this matter of removal? When Dampare was being hounded out, my position was the same as I suggest now, that if he had committed some sins, it was possible to sit down with him and take a correctional approach. That you have done A, B, C wrong. We'll give you X time to remedy them and to not, as it were, chart this path. Rather than say the only way out is to remove you.
I hear you don't believe at the point. Look,
I thought you supported me then. Now you are saying that people have committed some mistakes and errors.
I believe you are
they must be removed.
Me to elaborate further. I still support that position. Okay? And I don't want to personalize this to Dampare, but all these states, actors and whatever it is, there are sufficient processes. In the case of EC, all right, these are not available. You don't have a situation where somebody there's a police council or an EC council. It is not there. The only way out is for them to resign because they themselves have resisted. I said, I remember because I was part of this. From when attempts were made to audit them. And auditing was proper. Later on, it was declared that, yes, that was proper. They resisted it. We made attempts. There are IT experts that can prove that,
You can't buy an expensive printer and only use the fax function. There are so many things, but they refuse any kind of advice from any quarter. So what we have said about others will not apply to them. And to that point, look, I have said, well, Imani has said, and I repeat, it is time for us now to amend the Constitution. It's in the hands of HKP to totally change the laws which insulate the EC from some of the things we are talking about, and therefore they can't even, correct themselves. It is time to, from what the Constitution says about their independence, etc., how the EC heads are appointed, etc., and all the things down to the allies. But let's be clear, today as we speak, there is no shortage of laws or processes to resolve what is happening in Ablekuma North. And again, actually, Nkiti said it. So when you have had that kind of situation there, then it is incompetence. And now the incompetence is morphing into collusion. Let me be clear. I think they are afraid of the NDC.
Is that collusion?
Please, let me make my point.
Imagine that is true.
I have
is that
made
collusion?
my point that incompetence is morphing into collusion. One. Number two, they are afraid of the NDC. They are afraid to do the things that they themselves have decided that they want to do, because somehow they want to avoid what Asiedun Nkiti has said openly, that they believe they must be removed. Let me tell you, whether you boil it or you fry it, the NDC will remove you. And in this particular case, you will not have anybody helping you. So this collusion, and I say collusion because who doubts that if you rerun this election, the NDC will win? Who doubts it? And for that matter, I don't think the MPP is being difficult in that matter. They are being absolutely clear, and they are serious politicians. They know what is happening. When a strong man and a weak man have a simple case that goes to the palace, and the case or the verdict of the case delays in coming out, it means the strong man is losing. You have a situation like this where the government in power, clearly sees that if the EC does what they have sworn in court to do, it may not be in their interest. All of a sudden, they've shifted. The verdict is not coming out. And now we have to go and rerun everything. How did it move?
How can you say with such certainty that if they went to the rerun, the NDC will win?
That's what I'm explaining to you. That one, when you have a situation which does not defy resolution, you've sworn that there are three problems. Go and do it. When you say, all I need is security, take security. And I'm saying, when you have a strong man and a weak man take a simple matter to court or to the palace, and the verdict is delaying coming, means the strong man is losing. Which is why they are taking stances to help the strong man, which is what I'm calling
the same voters whose votes they are having problems counting, or they are having problems certifying, will be the ones who will vote.
No.
So
some people who
if they voted for the NPP, they will keep the NPP.
No.
If they voted for the NDC, they will also vote for the NDC.
That is what is called a simplistic analysis. That the same people who voted are going to go back and vote. It will never be so. Some of the people have died, some have traveled. Some people who voted NDC have changed their mind and they'll vote MPP. Some people who voted MPP have changed their mind and they'll vote NDC. Giving even the atmosphere.
So that gives you a fair resolution?
No, it is not. You see, an election is a snapshot in time, which an institution which is powered by law and the Constitution should take. And when you take that snapshot in time, it does not mean it is a perfect view of everybody. But that snapshot in time is the law, and that is what we are going to proceed with. That snapshot in time has been taken. The results are there today on paper. Hold on. And we have been saying to this EC that there is no reason why today I can scan something on my phone and send it to a place. Why you cannot do the send the pink sheet straight to the headquarters on the same day, etc. And I heard the other lady say it. And the EC has been dead eared to all of these things, and they keep on doing totally perverse things which lead us into this situation. Look, I have no doubt that the present position of the EC is supposed to help them their positions there, and it's not going to help them. I worry about what it means for this country. What it means is that if you sense something is going to happen, it doesn't matter. Just disrupt the system. And whoever comes and has the power will be able to manage it to their advantage. The EC should go back based on what they filed in court. Give them the security, let them deal with the outstanding. No new election is required. It will be an aberration.
The EC, this is what the EC did, and yet it is being faulted. Why? In the press statement it issued on the 2nd of July, it said, elections in selected polling stations in Ablekuma North constituency. As part of its commitment to resolve the impasse regarding the Ablekuma North constituency parliamentary election, the Electoral Commission yesterday, that's Tuesday, 1st July 2025, met with the representatives of the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party. The meeting, which was a follow-up to an earlier meeting held on Thursday, 12 June 2025, provided both parties the opportunity to brief the Commission on any new developments regarding the said constituency. The parties informed the Commission that their positions put forward at the last meeting remained unchanged. The NDC held the view that the election should be rerun in 37 polling stations because scanned pink sheets from 37 polling stations, which were used to collate the results, were provided by the NPP. The NPP was of the view that the results from 3 outstanding polling stations be collated and a winner declared, since the NDC agents had verified and confirmed the scanned polling station results the NPP presented. It's important for the public to understand that the issue in contention has to do with the fact that 37 pink sheets provided by the NPP and used to collate the results were scanned copies. The public may recall that political party supporters besieged our collation center and destroyed a number of the pink sheets for the Ablekuma North parliamentary election during the collation of the results following the 7th December election. After extensive deliberations, the Commission informed the political parties that it would proceed to rerun the election in 19 out of the 37 polling stations. The Commission arrived at the decision to rerun the elections in the underlisted polling stations because the 19 scanned polling station results used for the collation, though approved by agents of both parties, were not verified by the presiding officers responsible for those polling stations. It is instructive to note that the Commission was able to secure the presiding officer's verification and confirmation for 18 scanned polling station results. Agents of both parties also approved same. A rerun will therefore not be held in those polling stations. The elections will be held on Friday, the 11th of July 2025.
1 minute. So this is what you call an afterthought. I'm also going to read what there is. Only 2 paragraphs. It says, the collation of polling station results for Ablekuma North took place at the old office. The exercise was not completed because 3 out of 281 police stations were outstanding. What it means is all the rest.
This is the
EC.
The release it issued in January.
Yes.
Okay.
All that is important that this is the EC speaking authoritatively and things that they have sworn even in court. So it says, the Commission wrote to Ghana Police Service for the continuation of the collation on 17 January. On the day the collation was expected to take place, the Commission was alerted by the police that per the intelligence available to them, the exercise should be put on hold. Then I read the conclusion. It says, once again, we call on the government to engage the Ghana Police to ensure that the Commission is provided adequate security to enable us go to the office and carry out our functions in a safe and secure environment. Threats to lives and property are unacceptable and should not be allowed to continue. The Commission is working round the clock to ensure that the people of Ablekuma North have their member of parliament. We need the cooperation of the police to achieve this. The NDC view has always been rerun. The EC's view has always been give us security to recollect. How does that change?
Yes, my brother.
Let me finish.
My brother.
Yeah.
Following from where my brother left off. Like he said, the NDC's view has always been rerun. The MPP's position, which has been consistent with the sworn position of the EC, has been less complete with collation. At all material times, the police failed to cooperate with the EC to complete with the collation. Now, will the police give them the necessary security to do the rerun? In this instance. So the police is willing to cooperate with them on a rerun, but not ready to cooperate with them for the completion of coalition. Clearly, the EC's position is as a result of some pressure from the executive and the ruling party. And they are battling.
They cannot independently decide by themselves that because this issue remains unresolved after 7 months, this is a potent way and a fair way to resolve it. They can't do that. They must be under pressure by somebody to do that. Wait, yeah.
There's a court order. You and I know that a court order, unless it is set aside.
Yes. You can't beyond that. We can't do
anything apart from
can we apply that in this circumstance? It says continue and complete collation.
Yes.
They say they have.
And there is an order.
They say they have.
There is an order.
The court does not compel the EC to declare results.
If there is a default, the court cannot compel them.
Yes, so there's no compulsion. There's no compulsion to declare results.
Then the power of the court to make an order for mandamus, very respectfully, will be meaningless.
Mandamus says that you're supposed to do some work. You haven't done it. Go and do it.
Do what is required of you by law. And it didn't end there. The court, in its wisdom, realizing that the EC cannot independently do that without the support of the security, made an order for the police to support them. Now the police has defaulted in the circumstance, right? So EC consistently has shown its willingness, except to say that in the circumstance of this matter, the police is not ready, right, to help them. Okay? You think that the court cannot make further orders?
So
it can be enforced.
So you're going to court is to tell the court that there's something outstanding, there's an order that has not been complied with, therefore the elections cannot proceed.
You know that there are various ways of enforcing a court order, right? There are various ways. I don't want to mention them lest somebody makes that the headline, that MPP says it is going to do A, B, C, D. Our options are still clear to us. We are weighing them. We are going to do what they need for. But I'm saying that, given the facts, there's one thing which is obvious. The one thing is that the police, which is part of the executive, is only ready to assist the EC if it is interested in doing a rerun, as opposed to the court's order and the EC's consistent and indeed sworn position, which is to complete coalition. So the EC, nothing stopped them from leading a negotiated.
If the court makes an order like this kind, I don't remember if the order was directed at the police.
There was an order directed at the police.
If the court makes an order and the police for a long time was not complying, there were avenues for those who went to court to have gone back to the court to compel, compliance with the order. But you know that this is a tricky situation. Court says provide security. Those who are in charge of security make an assessment and say, this is not a place you are going to say you are going to provide security, because there will be chaos.
Today, you see,
today you can't have.
I have highlighted
security one.
It is obvious, Samson. It's obvious where you want to drag me to. I will not tell you the kind of orders or reliefs we are going to court to seek in the circumstance. Our options are open to us. We have various options under the civil procedure.
To be a fresh action.
No, you don't need a fresh action in this circumstance because the election has not come to an end. You can't trigger an election petition in the circumstance. What you need to do is to enforce the orders of the court, right? That is our clear option. But, my brother, is it not curious for me and for all of us that the police is ready to do a rerun, but not ready to provide security?
Good question.
We can approach this from the perspective of a negotiated settlement.
Okay.
But Samson, there's something.
What else is I'm coming to you. But what else is the best negotiated settlement than a rerun?
No.
Where everybody is given a fresh opportunity.
You know that curiously, the Glory Land Hotel, Odoko 1 polling station, which was supposed to be part of the 3 outstanding polling stations, is not part of the 19 polling stations, making the whole decision very chaotic and not informed, right, by anything that is known or factually, evidentially informed. It's not really informed. But my brother, there's something I need to say.
You, MPP, you don't trust the electoral commission?
We haven't said that. We haven't said that.
But you should trust them.
Samson,
they shouldn't. We've never trusted them.
Samson,
who have been looking at them closely.
Samson.
And this is an unnecessary fight.
Are you afraid your members will not turn out to vote? Are you afraid? What is it?
I've told you that it's about principles and values, which is what we build nations with.
It's about also creating peace and maintaining the peace. If this is what you have to sacrifice to get peace, why not?
Well, opinions are like noses. Everyone has one.
Okay.
But I am saying that, Samson, there's something I need us to
quickly. Then Nasser comes in, then we'll round up. Of course, with Vera.
Sal, my personal view of Sal is that I think that Sal, contrary to the general view that has been held, Sal has always been part, until recently, of the Buem constituency. Sal was not a constituency on its own. It was part of Buem constituency. It had representation until the Guan constituency was created to cover Sal. I am of the view that until the recent buckling of the Electoral Commission, they had, done fairly well. And I'll explain to you why.
They were denying the right to vote. They were denying representation. That's the crux of the matter.
No, but you can't say that. They decided that they will not be part of Buem. They decided because they wanted, that a lot of our people, districts mean a lot to them. Separate constituencies mean a lot to them. They took the position that being part of Buem is likely to deny them the constituency, a separate constituency.
And in granting them their wish, you do it in such a way that it gets to a point where they are unable to vote and they don't get an MP for a whole term.
Do you know that, Samson? We all know that the right to vote.
Elsewhere people would have resigned.
Wait.
People would have lost their jobs. It's only in Ghana that this happens and we get...
Is it true that they were supposed to be part of the Buem constituency? Is it true? It's a fundamental question. Let's answer. If it is true, if you have the right to vote and you decide not to vote, the EC will resign because of that. You have a right to vote.
On the eve of elections, the EC issued a circular.
I've asked a fundamental
and
question.
Announced to them that you are unable to participate in elections. There will not be an MP for your area.
Samson,
for XY reasons.
Looking
at those reasons impartially, you can tell that you cannot put the blame squarely on the EC. But again, how did all the people working together, the Attorney General's Department, Parliament, the EC, how did everybody working together work to a point where the people were denied the right to vote and they didn't have an answer?
Are the duty of the EC. The EC failed.
In our jurisdiction, it is obvious that the election, the organization of an election, is an ecosystem that involves other stakeholders. And so, just like what we are facing with Ablekuma North, the police deciding not to assist the EC. If the police decides not to assist the EC to do the needful under its mandated statute, are you going to squarely blame the EC?
What stops the EC from taking all the thing and doing the work in their headquarters?
The simple question, I haven't gotten an answer from you, or I've gotten a negative, response from you, is that you all still talk about settlement. When you're going into settlement, we are not looking for, a win-lose situation. We always are looking for a win-win situation. And in settlement, we compromise our rights sometimes. So if this is settlement, why not compromise what you are asking, collate and finish, and go for an election?
Quick one, please. Quick one. No, you have... See, for me, I don't see the settlement issue here. I'm saying, EC had a position, okay? Newton says that unless something impacts something, it will remain where it is. Something has impacted the EC to move them from that position. They are saying they did police, and I'm saying, why can't you deal with what is left? Take it to your head office. You have your own security, deal with it and finish that matter. And if it comes to settlement, look, we have an overwhelming majority of NDC today. If somebody has to bend backwards and settle, allowing Ablekuma North alone to go to NPP will not make any difference really. So I think settlement should go in a certain way, especially where you have a situation where
remember Nancy wants to speak. He hasn't had the opportunity yet.
But if you are talking about settlement, the EC's letter is not talking about settlement. It's speaking to factual matters.
Yes, because the two parties have taken an entrenched position. And it is the one that must make sure it is resolved. And it's been 7 months.
And that is contrary to your initial position. And that contradiction, where did it come from? Who told the EC that 19 are outstanding? Who? Suddenly, why has the EC taken the position that 19 police stations are outstanding? And so if it is about settlement, the facts would have reflected that.
Okay.
But in the circumstance of this matter, it's a complete new set of facts which the EC has generated, and nobody knows the basis of which it generated.
Okay, Abdul Nasser Alidu, you also speak briefly, and then we get to Vera, brief comments, and then we go to 24-hour economy. The question we are asking, whether it's a boon or it's a burden, is it the campaign promise that will hurt the NDC in the next elections, or rather will give it, an upper hand? Yeah.
My understanding is that the NDC's position has always been that 62 polling stations need to be rerun, not 19. So if I find it difficult to jump to the conclusion that the EC is doing the NDC's bidding. Because if the EC were to do NDC's bidding, they'll be running 62 polling stations, not 19 polling stations.
Correct.
The EC's position has been that they want to finish collation because 3 were outstanding, right? But at the end of the day, what we are hearing is that, they managed to get pink sheets for 18 or whatever of 37 or something that was outstanding, and they can't get consensus on 19. And what they want to do is to rerun the 19. I hear Kofi say here that, if they rerun the election today, NDC is going to win. Which to me suggests that is what the people want. If that's what the people want, then why not give them what they want?
But he spoke about the circumstances of the day of elections.
Yes, but
on the 7th of January.
It's the reason why we have by-elections. It's the reason why we have, anything can happen. In this instance, I was actually asking why can't they just go back to the ballot box and recount? And my understanding was that 2 weeks after the elections, the place the ballot boxes were kept got set on fire. This was 2 weeks into the election. The people in charge were the MPP. The MPP was in charge of this country at the time, 2 weeks after the election, when the ballot boxes got, bent. Are you then saying that the NDC were the ones that went to manipulate the police, got them out, and bent the place? You can't necessarily say that. And you can't also say that the NDC was in charge at that time. The NDC was in charge of this country at this time. For me, it also raises the issue of the integrity of the EC, especially, and also of the police.
You know what happens in by-elections? You finish on that point.
Okay.
They are clearly aware that this is how many polling stations? 19. As an incumbent government, you will take absolute domination and control of the place. If it is money, if it is whatever goodies, they will be provided. We know what happened in by-elections. The elections are literally bought.
We have an example in Judge Kweson's constituency. We went for an election, the NDC won.
Maybe an outlier.
Election. So, the thing is, there is evidence to show that, it can actually happen, right? It's not an issue.
So talk about your police and...
Now, the issue with the EC and the police, right? From everything that I've heard here, it gives me a lot of concern, especially about the commissioners that we have at the EC. Both what the MPP is saying and what Kofi Bentil is actually saying here is that these EC commissioners lack integrity. That's what both of them are saying.
Yeah,
what both of them are saying.
Said that.
But that's the implication.
I haven't said.
You have said so.
You've said so in many words.
But I have said it. You have said so in many words.
Listen, I have stated that in this instance, if I say you are not a man of integrity, right? It is an unchangeable verdict I've passed on you. But if you do something, and I say that in this instance, I think
relative to the situation.
That's right.
Okay.
But essentially what you're saying, and Nkrumah said, right, principle is indivisible, right? When you have principles, you stick to it. I believe that if there are people of principle, they would always stick to their points. And there are people that will not be influenced just by the threat of the loss of job. I will not be influenced by the threat of my job. Just because you say I might quit my job, then I do what I believe to be wrong. I will not do that. Now, if you are saying in this instance, the possible threat of loss of their job is why they are doing what they are saying, then you are basically saying they lack integrity, they don't have principle, and they don't stand by their principle. That's what you're saying, right? And that gives me concern, one, about the people at the helm of the EC at this stage, but also gives me concern about the sanctity of our political institutions, our state institutions, and what we need to do to ensure that we protect these state institutions.
All right. But remember, he says it was relative to the current circumstance and the issue. I'm a lawyer, I practice in the courtroom every day. I trust the judiciary, but I don't trust all of them.
All the time.
And there are certain times I can tell that there's wrong, which is not purely on based on some principles.
No, but in that instance,
when situations may make you compromise just to broker peace, that would not or should not affect your integrity.
Okay, thank you.
Vera, so it's about peace.
Yes,
good.
Vera.
And if it's about peace, then that is what it has to be. It's about peace. It's not about.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Vera. Let's go to Vera now. Vera, you have the last laugh. What will be your final comment on this issue? Well, this is where we are. The EC's edict is what we go with until a court says otherwise and compels the EC otherwise. Friday, the 11th of July, elections will be held in these 19 polling stations.
Yes, so I think that the dynamics have changed for a rerun, and so maybe I think the rerun may be helpful. It looks like most of them agree, both parties agree to rerun. Just the numbers that is from the conversation I'm hearing, it is either 3 or 19. So I think the EC
the NPP is opposed to a rerun. They don't agree.
All.
Yes, they're opposed to it. Except, Bafo just brought in a certain Glory Land hotel, which was part of the 3, which he feels should have been part, even if there was a rerun. I think that is why you are saying they too may be amenable to a rerun.
Yes, okay. Right, so, but for me, I think that the EC need to have a broader consultation, bring stakeholders on board. You see, when you have...
You mean the EC should suspend the decision it has taken now?
I think it would be helpful. You see, EC went to Parliament for how long, just came out and said they had decided to go back for a run, and then there's even a date. I think it was the timelines and the way the whole communication
went. What will you, CDD, say about the EC if they got up today and said, oh, because of the concerns of this other party, we will not do the rerun, we want to do XYZ, then they are not in charge.
No, I think consensus building doesn't, you see, it doesn't mean you are not in charge.
7 months of consensus building.
Exactly why I thought that the EC's own inconsistencies were not helpful. And I thought that 7 months, if they were coming up, we should have a clear direction, and they should have been the first to go to court for direction instead of coming up with something for the NPP to go back to court.
But why do they go to court when they have the power to do what they have to do?
No, Samson, you see, they have the power, but why did the NPP go to court in the first place? These are issues that you don't just get using scanned copies to collect results. It's not in any of the procedure. It was built on consensus that let's use scanned copies. So if there are no consistencies with some of this arrangement, you only resort to 2 parties, and there were no issues when the party agreed.
Why? In Domi, didn't they use scanned copies?
Exactly. That is.
So what's the problem? They can use the scanned copies too as well.
But you see, that is also the inconsistency. Why are you using scanned copy for others? When there's consensus, there are no issues, and then the parties agree. But when the parties do not agree, you have to get a direction from the court. It helps matters than taking a decision. Why didn't they rerun Domi Kwabenya but use the scanned copies?
Okay.
The parties agree to it. So consensus building is important, and the EC must, even if they are going to go for a rerun, I think that they have to do a much consultation and communication around it, and not take it for granted that people can just mobilize. And it will be good, Samson, to hear also from Ghana Police about this, that some assurance that they are ready to protect the system and not just allow this to happen. I really think the EC, most of issues, important issues, Samson, have been resolved through IPAC, and they shouldn't just meet two parties, bring stakeholders on board. And the decisions, agreements at IPAC, we should find a very good way of documenting it, getting the agreement signed, something binding. And this is something we've been calling that IPAC should be institutionalized. It shouldn't just be calling them and then what happens if the decisions at IPAC are not binding and parties are not signing to it. And I think they've done this for so long that EC should learn from this, that they go and agree to something and then a party comes and say we didn't and all of that. What's the evidence that they agreed to it? What's the recording?
No, in this case, there was a reason I read the whole of the press statement. The press statement didn't say they agreed. The press statement said they held a meeting on the back of a June meeting to try and reach some agreement. And the two parties stated clearly that their previous position was what they were standing by. And the EC says, eventually, this is what we have been able to verify. This is what we have not been able to verify through our officers. Our view is that there must be a solution, and the solution is a rerun. They haven't said that the two parties agree. I
think that is where we have an issue. Our view, you see, it's not just the EC's view. We have to have the parties agreeing to something. And now this is where it has gotten at.
But it's been 7 months. When will they agree? These two parties never really agree.
So you learn from the lessons that you don't meet two parties and say, based on this meeting, this is where we are going. Let's get everybody involved, get parties involved. If it's even have to stream again, whatever is happening for the public to know, get some consensus. We have been doing this for some time, and we don't have to go beyond this year without any election run. And the EC should just change the way they are doing things.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you, Vera.
It's not fit for purpose. Taken seriously.
Thank you, Vera.
When we were complaining about EC, the same MPP people derided us. Today, you see that problem is recurring and it's against them. We should not gloss over the fact that there's an institution which is sufficiently, given the powers to
Okay, Kofi, thank you. Thank you very much. Vera, it has to be noted that you were seeking that if everybody is not agreeing and consensus is not working, the EC should rather go to court rather than proceed. So in law, there may be a difficulty that the EC, which is constitutionally empowered to do some work, and the two parties are disagreeing, the EC must go to court to get a certain order before it proceeds. No, I don't think it works that way. It has to use and assert its power and allow the two parties, if anyone disagrees, to go to court. It shouldn't be the other way around. I don't even know if they had to go to court, what are they going to ask for? They will not have a basis. The court will throw them out. We'll be right back. My guests have been Nana Ejay Bafo MP Mensha South Vice Chairman, Subsidiary Legislation and Member, Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. Abdul Nasser Alidu is Head of Strategy and Programs. He's here more particularly for the 24-hour plus economy secretariat. He's here to talk about the 24-hour thing. And then Kofi Bento is lawyer and vice president, Imani Africa. Also, we have Vera Abena Ado, Programs Officer, CDD Ghana, Elections, Rule of Law, and Anti-Corruption. We will be joined by Professor A. Bokwing, Professor of Finance and Economist at the University of Ghana for our second segment. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And let me share some of your messages with you before we go to the Asempa Namba 24-hour economy thing. Is it boom or is it bedding? I don't know, but somehow these things are difficult to take from the politicians, that 24-hour economy. And you're not like a Singapore with some kind of, how many years of a reign. In 4 years, how are you going to be able to do that? Global Citizen says that it's not just the NDC chairman that wants them gone. We, the people of Ghana, want the EC overhauled too. Alan Ampofo says those charlatanic electoral commissioners should be removed and prosecuted. Prosecuted for what? B. Nana says the rerun is the only way out of this. After all, in 2012, MPP petitioned the Supreme Court to order the cancellation of some results and also order rerun in those polling stations. Fidel Agagle says the EC is just inconsistent. If they went to court and an order was to do collation, then why should they go back to the court? Why should they not go back to the court to seek for an order to execute a rerun? The EC didn't go to court. It was the aggrieved parties that went to court. It was the NPP and its people. Remember that actually processes were heard without the NDC. They went to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court insisted that they should be heard before they were heard. Abdul Latif Muni says they should sack them all. They are a serious dent on our democracy. Titi Abongo says that no single soul should independently take fragile decisions either based on their own whims and caprices or based on the interest of the appointing authorities. If you don't have the mental capacity to do these pertinent things, please stay home. And at Lord Kim Azim Tango, that they should be sent packing. Public office holders should at all material times reason sensibly, think of the ramifications of their actions and inactions on the entire nation. They should be people who can reason with their minds and act. And Damien XXV says, see how they made a whole constituency not to have an MP for a full term. They have got blood on their hands. Quite interesting comments there. President Mahama had a landslide victory at the last election. It is a non sequitur to assert that our president is beneficiary of EC's incompetence. Is it okay to say that I am struggling with common sense, my brother? Okay. Just a couple more. This one's from Mancha Bruce. Takrady says, Samson, the EC shift in position appears to be a direct response to the external pressure, especially the impeachment threat. This inconsistency undermines the Commission's perceived impartiality and commitment to upholding the law. Amazing convictions. Atta says that, Atta Badu says that, you lost the elections because of Nanado. Me, Kobna, I have never voted NDC and will never do, but even if an election is run today, I won't vote again. You are doing yourself any good. You are not doing yourself any good with this posture. One seat will not change your fortunes. Be gracious, cede it, win back the base. So some advice there. Then the NPP saw nothing wrong with the EC when they override some of the administrative processes. If today the EC realized there were mistakes in the collation of the Ablekuma North parliamentary election results and wants to correct it through a rerun of 19 stations, why are they accusing and condemning the EC for what they supported them to do all this while? Mike Kali, I think I can take a break here. Samuel Boabin says that it is truly baffling that the Electoral Commission, after firmly declaring it would not conduct elections even in the 3 disputed polling stations, has now reversed its position and decided to hold elections not only in those 3 but in an additional 16 polling stations. The real question is this: if the police were unable to provide security for the collation of the results from just 3 polling stations, how can they possibly guarantee security for elections and collation in 19? something simply doesn't add up. Samuel being in Awoshi sent in that one. Had this idea of rerun been thought about before Dr. Bosman went to Parliament? Don't you think there is disagreement among the EC, within the EC? Okay, interesting questions all coming up. Yakubu Ibn Chambers says that the establishment of the prima facie case was premised on petitions of politically tainted individuals. Okay, I think that, right, I'm sorry, that will be a message about some other issue that we are not discussing today. Thank you. Now, let's go to the government needing 541 million to be invested in what we are talking about, or what exactly is the amount they say they need. Right, they need $4 billion US, $4 billion US to run the 24-hour economy, to make it possible. In Ghana cedis, that will be 41 billion US dollars that will be needed. 41 billion Ghana cedis. I said in Ghana cedis, 41 billion. Come on. All right. So let's hear President Mahama as he launched the blueprint for this 24-hour economy.
The finance and implementation institutional frameworks for 24-hour plus. The private sector will lead the 24-hour plus program. Government will facilitate and not dominate. Government will facilitate and not dominate. Any government funding in 24-hour plus will be catalytic, serving as seed funding for the 24-hour plus authority and supporting bulk infrastructure. Enterprise financing will be sourced through commercial banks, DFIs, and blended finance instruments. Fund 24 will address access to capital, collateral constraints, and the short-term nature of most of our banking finance. Credit guarantee schemes will support risk sharing without breaching our fiscal covenants with our multilateral institutions. And as announced, the Secretariat will evolve into an autonomous 24-hour plus authority that reports directly to the President. This policy is made for Ghana in the future. And so when I say report directly to the President, I don't mean only this President. It will report to the next President and the next President and the next President.
All right, so you've been hearing the President, John Dramani Mahama, on the 24-hour economy as the blueprint was launched. Now, some of the brains in the offices where all of this is cooked up, as in prepared, are right here in the studio to help us to understand exactly what is going on. We're also joined by Professor Godfred Bokwing, Professor of Finance and Economist at the University of Ghana. So Abdul Nasser Alidu, Head of Strategy and Programs of the 24-hour Plus Secretariat. Now, let's begin the conversation. My question is this a boon or a burden for this government? Will it really be able to do something substantial to realize a 24-hour economy? Is 24-hour economy a question of seeking $4 billion US or 41 billion Ghana cedis, or is just a question of natural factors of, economic growth?
Okay. And I think when you lead with the question of the 4 billion, it misses the point. Because the point of this, and if you listen to what the president said when he launched it, was that there's been a lot of introspection and looking at what ails not just Ghana's economy, but a lot of African economies and a lot of economies in the developing world. And coming to the realization that the way, part of our problem has been the way our economies are structured. The problems are structural. A lot of it are legacies, from colonial times, that we haven't really taken the time to understand and change. So, for me, the point is not whether this would be a boom or a bust for the NDC, but it's an issue of what do we need? We've been going at this, development thing for how many years now? More than 60 years right now.
From Nkrumah's 7-year plan.
Exactly. We haven't made much progress, right? There needs to be a paradigm shift. There needs to be a shift in the way that we think about our development. And this blueprint provides a different way of thinking about development and ensuring that we are able to achieve the levels of job creation and prosperity for our people.
People are thinking about Ghana beyond aid. And it was Ghana not beyond IMF.
Yeah, and that's where then we need to get into the details of it, right? Because critically, the things that we realize are these. Number one was the fact that our economy was structured to be import dependent, and basically was structured as an economy that really was really meant for extraction of raw materials, extraction of resources, right? And so you realize that in terms of our exports, our top exports today are gold, oil, and cocoa, even though cocoa is dwindling. But these contribute 80% or more of our exports. We don't export a lot of value-added products. Even places like Kenya, export a lot more value-added products than we do. And we import everything else, including inputs that we use to producing the things that we even use in this country, right? And in terms of, so if you look at the data... Including Yemuadie, right? Yeah. Yemuadie is our second largest, food import.
We spend close to 3 billion Ghana cedis.
Yeah, exactly. In importing Yemuadie. We can't continue like that, right? And if you continue like that, the way this economy is structured, what you end up doing is that even in times when we think we are, and that's part of the problem, because there's been a lot of really good interventions, but because of the siloed nature, because we are not thinking about it in an integrated fashion, looking at all the different value chains that they will impact and how do we support it, we end up sometimes even causing more problems for ourselves when we are trying to do the right thing. So what we are trying to do is take a step back, understand what have we done all these years that hasn't worked. What are the lessons to learn from the different things, the Ghana Beyond Aid, 1D, 1F, all of those things. What are the lessons that we learn from it? And how do we do it differently to ensure that we actually...
Are we ever learning any lessons?
Well, hopefully this...
Even in the housing sector, everybody comes and says affordable housing. They won't finish. Another one comes. Instead of completing what was left...
That's why you don't...
Instead of completing what was left, you start a new one and then start prosecuting people over the old one. And the old one is rusting, getting damaged. We don't finish it. As we speak now, there is prosecution of Collins Dada and the rest, right? That was which was ongoing, which has now been terminated. I said the last time I remember, and that project was not followed through, and we're losing all the money we sunk into it. It's becoming even more expensive, to deal with it. Tell us what is going to be different. What are the lessons you have learned at the Secretariat, led by Guzitano, to model something that is different from all that we have seen, including the Ghana Beyond Aid?
Okay. So, in terms of the way we've approached this, right, our strategy has been, one, let's identify which sectors are the prime for us to focus on. Which value chains are most important for us, right? Because you can't do everything at the same time. You talk to so many people, you come up with, but you can't do everything at the same time. And then let's identify what are the constraints within these value chains and how do we ensure we remove these value chains. The whole objective there is to ensure that we are building integrated value chains in order to, one, increase input self-reliance. Okay, we produce more of what we need and then be able to generate the surpluses to be able to export. We want to increase resilience so that when there are shocks within the global supply chains, we are not as significantly impacted as we are today. Today, if there's any shock within the global supply chains, Ghana is one of those that gets affected the most. That's why, for instance, in the last administration, you heard a lot about Russia, Ukraine, okay? And there were all sorts of, issues around Russia, Ukraine. We want to be able to change that. And we also want to get to the stage where we are making optimal use of the resources that are available to us, okay? So one of the things that you actually even realize, so we looked extensively at 1D1F and what worked and what didn't work. And one of the things that you realize with 1D1F, for instance, is that it was broad in the areas it had to be narrow and narrow in the areas that it had to be broad.
Explain that.
And I'll explain that. So 1D1F was essentially couched as a manufacturing intervention. So, and in that sense, it was too narrow because you can't just grow manufacturing without thinking about the full value chain. Because if you start, for instance, if you look at agro-processing, the problem with agro-processing in this country, the biggest problem with agro-processing, they'll tell you, is inputs. We don't get the raw materials that we need to be able to produce. I'm told that we get only about 30% of the raw materials that we need for agro-processing from Ghana. Okay. If you want to solve that problem, if you want to get into agro-processing and improve agro-processing, you need to look at the full value chain. You need to understand where is the primary production being done that feeds into this. How are you getting the equipment, the machinery and things that you need to be able to do that? So in that sense, 1D1F tackled the problem very narrowly, looking at just manufacturing. Now, it was broad in the area where it had to be narrow in the sense that it did not then focus on which places do we have the competitive advantage for manufacturing that we focus on. And so it was just left broadly. So anywhere you go, anything you want to do becomes part of it. That you spread yourself too thin, right? Those are some of the lessons that we've learned that you see actually getting into
By reading your document, you are simply out there to incentivize businesses to grow the economy. That's all you're going to do, and you're going to do it by, giving them some exemptions, tax exemptions, no import duty. It's the same thing, 1D1F was doing. As for electricity consumption, you said, if corporate and income tax rebates, you spoke about that as well. If you are doing 2 shifts, you get 25% rebate. If you are doing 3 shifts, you get 50% rebate, and so on and so forth. What else is different?
Okay, so there are a number of things that are different in this instance. So you talk about the, I've told you one about the fact that this is, we are adopting an integrated value chain approach. We selected very specific value chains in which we need to focus in. 1D1F, you didn't have that. The other thing, you talk about incentives. We've looked at the incentive regime in this country, taking a look at all the laws and how, people, you realize that there is so much discretion that's given to the bureaucracy. Too much discretion to the extent. So you can be doing the same thing. I could be doing the same thing as Prof. I'll get all the tax incentives and Prof will not get anything just because I know somebody and he doesn't know someone. So if you look at part of what we are proposing is that incentives should not be, left to discretion of bureaucrats or politicians. Incentives should be based on performance and based on what it is, what are the priorities of the government. Okay, so what is the country's priorities and how do you do it? So that's one of the very, and this is significant.
So if it will not be left to politicians or bureaucrats, as you said, who is going to be making this decision so that there will not be the discrimination you speak about?
There needs to be clarity. So for instance, if we've identified oil palm as a strategic value chain that we want to develop, And we say if you are bringing in equipment that is related to oil palm, you get incentives. This should be clearly spelled out so that if I get to Tema and I'm bringing something that impacts on the oil palm value chain, the guy at the port should be able to make that decision and move. I don't need to now apply to the minister for the minister to provide the exemptions, and then it goes to the GRA commissioner for the GRA commissioner to do this. I don't need to do all of that. Okay, so that's part of what, so when you say it needs to be very clear, and I need to know that I'm getting this even before I come in. Because in today's regime, you don't know what you're getting until you come in. You come in, you write a letter and hope that it is approved before you get in. Those are some of the things that...
Some of the processes of the exemptions are actually unconstitutional, we contend. And I have been in court, in the Supreme Court,
that's good,
leading 3 MPs
that's
to
great.
Challenge the manner in which the 1D, 1F, exemptions were being dished out. And it's the problem you have actually mentioned.
Exactly.
Because eventually we are sort of channeling money to party people and not really interested in building, companies that will last and provide the jobs.
Exactly. So that's part of what we are. The other thing that we are doing that's very significant, and I'm sure is the Volta Economic Corridor that we are looking at. And this is a vast resource that we haven't taken much advantage of. Now, when you look at it, and when I started, I was talking about the fact that much of our problems and much of what we are doing today is steeped in the thinking from colonial days. Okay. For example, if you think of agric, for instance, almost every person you meet today who is into agric is looking at exports, not looking at feeding the country. But you need to first achieve food sovereignty, food sustainability before you even think about exporting what you have. So you go into the, how do you call it? We're having some conversations with the rubber industry recently, and rubber manufacturers in this country cannot get the rubber to process, and yet we are exporting the rubber. That's what actually led to the TCDA sending out the directive that we need to satisfy local, demand before we actually think about exports. Within the Volta economy, so that's one of the colonial thinking. The other problem also has been, if you look at the development of infrastructure in this country, you realize much infrastructure is developed on the western side. So, most of the railways and the roads are more on the western side because that's where a lot of the resources were. So if you think about the bauxite, the gold and everything, it was either inland or to the west. And that's why you see all of this built over there. You don't see a lot of that in the eastern side of the country. And then we had this Akosombo Dam and this huge river, this huge lake, got created. The lake is, pardon? But that's what I said.
You said huge lake God created.
No, got created.
Oh, sorry. Then I heard you. I just needed to correct that for the record's sake. Maybe other people heard so.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
I didn't say God created it. Yeah, it's the biggest man-made lake in the world.
Thank you. That's what
that's it. And you have so much land over it. We've visited it. We've traversed. And what you realize, the place is in terms of population density, very low population density. Much of the agriculture you see there is actually not irrigated agriculture, but they are right by the lake and they are farming, and it's all based on rain, when you have that water running over. And you ask yourself, why are we not developing this place? The response that you get is that, well, to develop it is too expensive to build the roads to access those places. And so we focus on developing the parts where the roads are already built rather than focus on building the place where the roads are not. And that's a fair concern, because I actually, in looking at this, we reviewed one project that was done in the Afram Plains area. And almost 50% of the costs was actually the construction of the road. Okay. So it's expensive to build roads, but you have the river there, and the river can be the road. So the concept here is let's rethink the way we think about development around that area. Let's think about the river as the road. If you think of the river as the road, then you can open up the place. You can build the agroecological parks, which depend on the water for irrigation. So you are no more farming once a year, you are farming twice a year or 3 times a year in sometimes. And then build the factories that support basically agro-processing and taking it.
Okay.
It's not the same thing as 1D, 1F. So we can talk about it.
So you hold on now. Yeah. I wanted you to open, and then my other guests will come in, and you will have the opportunity to make corrections or interventions as may be necessary. You are talking about targeted VAT exemptions, time of use of electricity tariffs. You are talking about export value rebate for exporters. You're going to get state institutions to prioritize local goods, pop-up stores and regular trade expos, fast-track utilities and regulatory clearances. You are also looking at what you call the agroecological parks along the Volta Basin. You just mentioned part of that. Urban farming clusters, Volta Lake irrigation, you spent some time on that. Volta Lake transport system, you just spent some time on that. You have nationwide industrial parks, 50 plus acres per park, dedicated power grid, embedded policies and fire service, located near agro ecological zones, etc., and 4 billion. Once again, I go to the figure because we always ask where are you going to get the money from? When Akufo-Addo as candidate before he became president started with Stephen Saka on Hard Talk and spoke about free SHS, the first question was, how are you going to pay for it? He fumbled, came to Ghana. You guys put a few things together before we said, Jack, it was a free SHS. Imani told you, you are not doing it the way it should be done. You won't listen. Then later, eventually, little by little, this is where we are. So, I hear from Prof, before I get to my other guests. Yes, Prof, what do you make of this 24-hour economy?
Morning to our cherished listeners. So finally, the document is here. Let me say, some of us got it ahead, way back and all of that. So I'll situate my position this way because I've looked at the document from the beginning to the end. I've also looked at it in relation to Ghana Beyond Aid. I've looked at it in relation to the coordinated program of social and economic policy from 2017. It was actually supposed to have ended in 2024, but because of COVID, we extended 2025 and all of that. And more importantly, I've looked at this document in relation to the IMF-supported program. And the reason I did all of this is to understand why there is lack of policy continuity with our own programs. Meanwhile, IMF will give us a program. Start with one administration. Another administration comes, they continue. Incentives, all of that play a role. So I'll look at it this way. From conceptualization, diagnosis, there isn't much difference in this document and Ghana Beyond Aid. And then the coordinated program of social and economic development, all of that, there isn't much difference. When I say there isn't much difference, it's not like work hasn't gone into this. Is the issues which have been diagnosed under the NPP. They said they were going to change the Gorgesbeck economy. What was the Gorgesbeck economy? It was essentially moving the economy from being dependent on primary commodities to more value added and the rest of them. And in fact, and if you read the document and you read the Ghana Beyond Aid and all the others, you can see that we all have that broader consensus that we need to do something about.
For example, we have always known we need some agricultural revolution.
Precisely.
So nothing new, really.
Yes, from social studies.
Yeah. Way back.
Yeah.
Way back. JHS.
You see why some lecturers don't revise their notes. Please forgive me. If the things we told them to do in the 70s, they haven't done it. Maybe we should repeat it in 2024 or something.
Social studies, when you are asked why Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's state-owned enterprises collapsed, the same issues that made it collapse, they are the same issues that confront us today.
Right.
So nothing is changing.
Right.
So So something from that perspective, the diagnosis is right, and I think a lot of work has gone into that in terms of changing the structure of the economy. I mean, in the 60s, almost 80% of our export earnings driven by primary commodities. When we say we have done well as a country, it's more of the same. We have added oil and gas, but it's still primary commodities and all of that. So all successful governments have made the attempt to do something about this and all of that. So from that perspective, I would say fine. In fact, something, if you take time to read the Ghana Beyond Aid and you read this, you will see great similarity.
And when do you want it?
You will see great similarity. Look, they call it now, we've christened it Grow 24. Grow 24. In fact, under the Ghana Beyond Aid, they call it Wiser Ghana. 5 pillars. Wealthy Ghana, inclusive Ghana, sustainable Ghana, empowered Ghana, resilient Ghana, and all of that. When you look at the framework from that perspective, then there are the strategies to deliver this. Call them economic development instrument. Then they talked about 1D, 1F. So it's not just in isolation. In fact, there's a whole linkages identified in there. And we have looked at the government economic development instrument, not just 1D, 1F. The economic development instrument the NPP government implemented from 2017 to 2024. If you look at this, straddled across fiscal, monetary, and specific interventions, which include 1D, 1F, planting for food and jobs, and the linkages and all of that. In fact, why it didn't work, we can understand that. But of course, let me say this. Some progress was made under these interventions. And where I think that this document should make reference and demonstrate how we are building on some of these things. It helps in taking the politics out of it, rather than developing this as though it's just
a new document.
A new document and all of that. We need to demonstrate succession. We need to demonstrate progressivity,
sustainability,
and continuity. And why this is important is that given that it doesn't lie entirely within the government to implement this.
That's right.
Because the financing is not going to come from you. You want to develop it in such a way that there's some kind of continuity. So, for instance, some businesses benefited under the 1D, 1F. How do they feed into this? And all of that. So those are the things that I think we need to look at. So it's a great document. A lot of thought has gone into it, but there's a lot more we have to do. Samson, if you read the NDC's manifesto, the Ghana Beyond Aid is packaged as the overriding, more like the overriding framework.
The MPP manifesto.
No, I'm
talking the concept.
The concept.
That's right.
So everything else draws from that. Everything else draws from that. So, but if you read the document, it's much more narrow. In fact, and here I will link that to Ghana Beyond Aid. Ghana Beyond Aid, they had determined that by a certain date, our GDP per capita will grow up to a certain point. They had even determined that in order to reach that point, we needed to grow our economy on the average by 9.5% and all of that. You see, consistently, because you see, you need to have that. Then the next important question you do is, what do we need to put in place to grow at this level? I know that this whole thing is about job bridge. I've seen targeting about 1.7 million jobs and all of that and all of this. But this is how I think we can go about it. But something, let's look at it this way. So strategy. The pathways to implement this or the economic development instrument, I agree. The difference also here is that there's a bit more focus on big scale intervention in terms of using the voter league. And I think a lot of work has been done in the time past about the economic potential of the voter league. So it's good that they are making use of that. And I think that is very good. The other thing I want to talk about is implementation. Samson, you know that we have successfully implemented 17 IMF-supported programs. In fact, on the IMF website, they tell us that we have been there 18 times, and we are saying 17. We will not go into why 18 and all of that. In all of this, Samson, we have never created a secretariat for IMF-supported program in this country. You know why that is important? And if you look at the implementation strategy here, I have serious reservations. We don't need to create an authority after for Ghana Beyond, for 24-hour economy. Look, something. Since 1992, if you look at development policies and how we seek to implement it, we take it away from the existing structures within which the development channels must flow. And that is where the politics become typified.
Special assistance.
Okay. Pick National Health Insurance Authority, right? Something. From the time it was set up to date, approximately 44% of the total allocation to them is spent on administration. How do you pay claims promptly? Look at Cocoa Board. It's possible that Cocoa Board has more V8 than cocoa beans. Okay, and the rest of them. So the administrative cost of implementing some of these things becomes huge. We don't need to even create a separate unit within Ghana Police Service for 24 hours. It's supposed to be a mindset. This is government program. Everybody works with it. Okay, so look at IMF supported program. We don't have a secretariat here to implement it. IMF has an office here. It's not an implementing office. And yet, we start the program. I hope you understand that a different regime comes because they are using the systems. So if I read a document and say that there will be a secretary that will collect data, this, what is Ghana Statistical Service doing? Okay, so how do we infuse this within our, we have a decentralized local government system, development pathways, and all that. Let's do that. That way, we will minimize the cost of implementing this intervention. So I said that you see there's been a lot of about whether the policy eventually is here. There are a lot of thinking has gone into it, but I'm saying that we can make it work better. And all that way, once we infuse it within the existing systems, ministries, departments, agencies, they are all running with it. Even if there's a change in government, it will not necessarily dislocate the pathway and the rest. Otherwise, you create, for instance, the same thing we did for 1D, 1F, and the rest of them. So once there's a change in government, what happens? All those people will go. We created Southern Development Authority. We created this authority, created this. All of that, they are cost centers, budgetary allocations. What is the value? The taxpayer is burdened. And all of that. So let's look at it. Then the other thing I want to talk about is this. If I pick this document, what are the key performance indicators? How is that linked to the critical success factors within all of this? In fact, something 6 months from now, if we want to know the progress government is making on this, how are we going to tell? And that is why IMF programs work effectively. And I would advise, that's why in looking at this document, I looked at it side by side, other document that we have had, and I also looked at it side by side with the IMF supported program. Look, there's a phasing, a regular review, and that is why it compels government to work with it, because July 7th or so, the IMF executive board will meet on our program. That's a review. When they are done, they will give us their review. Everybody will read it. Stakeholders. So this one, what is the phasing? And once you do the phasing, it will compel you to develop projections.
Right.
So I see that maybe 2028, they are talking about target, but 6 months from now, how do we break them down into objective targets and the KPIs and the data we need to generate?
What's your verdict or hope in the promise of this document, this policy?
Look, there's potential in this document. Just as you see, look, Ghana's development is in our literature. The document, when you read it, you will smile for Ghana.
Just as the laws that we pass.
We can write.
Okay, but the issue is how do we move this from good intentions into implementation and the rest of them? And here, I'll say the costing hasn't been done properly. In fact, you need more than $4 billion, unless the $4 billion is the administrative cost and the rest of them, because one channel which they want to bring this 24-hour economy into fruition is the big push. The big push itself in their manifesto, they've indicated they need $10 billion.
That's correct.
To bring it. So that's just one part. Because without infrastructure, and I like the diagnosis, the work that the team has done in terms of the contribution of logistics to prices. Okay, we are doing close to 35, 40%.
60%.
Yes, and the rest of them. So
if a company, a private entity is going to employ 3 people for one job or 2 people for one particular role in a company, does it take this incentive, giving them lower electricity tariffs?
They will wait. You look at it and say it's cost benefit. To have somebody on your payroll, there has to be a reason beyond just incentives.
That reason is?
Okay, so the reason is You see,
market-driven.
Yes, market-driven. And there's a dominant school of thought that says that you need to create a certain enabling environment, broad-based. Okay, that is more effective than maybe creating a delimited this thing and say incentive and all of that, because the frictions in the economy would outweigh whatever incentive they want to get from.
I had a senior police officer talk about is it a 24-hour something secretariat at the police headquarters.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier, that we don't need to go that
24-hour security. I was like, look, what's he talking about?
And
has security ever been less than 24 hours? Mm-hmm. So what is the point?
And why should that be done for those who work the last shift? Those who work the first shift, they need protection to sleep soundly, as much as those who go the last shift and all of that. So that's what I'm saying. When we go this way, then anytime there's a change in government, we have to disband. And all of that's how we make the politics look so distinct.
Somebody said they went to the DVLA, which has created a 24-hour service. And they went there, they were told that they couldn't process something because of either internet or something of the sort in the night.
So, so that's what I'm saying. So I believe that the government is going to do that. And that is why in terms of the pathways, road, infrastructure, logistics, they've talked about all of them. Of course, the integrated and the leakages looks very beautiful, okay, on the document, all of that, but implementation, the question is, 4 billion, certainly not adequate. Where is it going to come from? And something more recently, when COVID came, we had Ghana Care Obatampa, PCPEC, and the rest of them. They said 100 billion. And then they said the 100 billion, 70% was going to come for private sector. Look, before private sector will put their money there and all of that. So that's what I'm saying, that to the extent that its implementation does not depend totally on government, then we want to be able to, I believe that is a good starting point. We need to, we'll flesh it up and all of that and see how.
So we'll get to him to explain later what they mean by that. You know, 4 billion, 41 billion in Ghana cedis. We understand there will be $300 million from governments. And that's supposed to represent 7%. There will be PPPs via the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. Criminal courts. Okay, SkyTrain, eh? Is that the place? Then there is $148 million of 2025 District Assembly's Common Fund for 24-hour markets. I'm asking, I was going through and asking myself, so why are you creating this market? Do they need, you know, a night market, so to speak? Is that what you want to do?
Excessive branding.
Or we will just do some things to show at elections that we have done something. Kofi, let me come to you before. Because I'm reading about how many chip compounds that are going to be built. And I'm like, okay, so you may not like Akufo-Addo. You may not like his government. They've done bad things. But they started a project, a hospitals project. Can't we look at that, finish them up, rather than these chip compounds everywhere again, so that you can say, beat your chest at elections and say, we did this number of chip compounds?
That's our problem.
Yes.
Right? Our governments think that they need to come in and say big, lofty things. And from Free SH's time, when we started, you know, being very forceful about what has been said in the manifesto, we said something. We said that, look, when they say it on a political platform, they don't really say it after the thinking. They say it because the moment requires them to say something bombastic. But after they say it and it catches, then they are forced to implement it. Then when they realize that they have to implement this, otherwise they'll be held to it, then they create something to represent what they've said. Then you end up with a document like this. And Prof. Bokpin is a fellow in Imani. We have had some discussions, but we have not actually analyzed this as Imani. I'm saying this because he said half of the things I wanted to say. And if we had met and said something about it, it would have come out officially that, but that's half. When you process development this way, you end up with a lot of branding, with a lot of glossy magazines,
And then by the time you finish, nothing is achieved. However, there's a curious feature of all of them, NDC, NPP. They access the funds and they spend those funds. We run, and by the way, please let me make this clear. I am not against the 24-hour thing. Sometimes we will sound critical and look, governance is hard. We live in a country which is not developed and unreasonably so. So every government must do something, be seen to be moving, and this is not a bad thing.
Yes.
What we are trying to say is that this is more of the same. And what we are trying to point out is, let me start this way. If it goes the way they've represented it in the glossy magazine 24-hour, we'll end up achieving less than 30%. Let me tell you what we are going to do. We run something called the Excuse Republic. We have already given the excuse for our underdevelopment. It's in the document. And that's what we say we all learn in primary school. Because of import, we import more. That's the excused, republic. Okay. And when we create the excuse for the, we give the excuses for the underdevelopment, then we give excuses for fanciful ideas. Because we are not importing, we'll do import substitution. And we'll build factories and we'll do this. 1D, 1F, many of the things said there are here. And if you trace it backwards, like Prof said, you see them there. So excuse for fanciful ideas, which we don't achieve. And then we make excuses for waste and stealing. That's the 4 billion you are hearing. Any analyst will tell you that if you look at some of the things that they've talked about, 4 billion is not going to cut it at all.
They're looking to start with a pilot with 50, firms.
That's always what happens. We are going to do a pilot. That's what I'm saying. That's the excuse for waste and stealing. So they will access $300 million or so. Okay, did you see people go and dig dugouts and call them dams under 1D, 1F? That's the excuse for waste and stealing. And then we end up having proofs about them. Then we always do something. We create excuses for building institutions and passing new laws. You hear they are going to set up an authority.
Yeah, 24-hour economic authority.
I also
don't do it. You don't need look. My brother here was asking them in Parliament, where are the legal framework, whatever it is. We have enough laws in this country to deal with everything that we want to do without setting up new laws. Every time we just set up institutions, you know what? Ghana has a large government.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about from district level to regional level.
And the cost is huge.
And it's extra. They suck up 80% of all the revenue we make. And they're supposed to be taking care of me. I'm telling you, more than 50% of the citizens in Ghana live and do not detect much government intervention in their daily lives. Yes. And there are people outside Accra who the government doesn't know from birth to death. So don't build new authorities, then new offices, new furniture from China.
I thought, Kofi, that the IMF program included and compelled us to free setting up new institutions. So Akufo-Addo's government began, if you had a legislation you wanted to promote, and it meant that we have to set up another commission authority, they didn't take it.
IMF, we call them adult supervision.
Yes.
Okay, they come, they do the things we must do, which we know how to do. As long as they are providing the adult supervision and keeping their thumbs on us, we do all of them. We always pass. We get out with flying colors. But you know what we do? They create parallel systems that bypass the IMF. And in fact, at a point, even after HIPIC, when we used to be going for those things, they come with conditionalities forcing us to do, that's the adult supervision. We said we won't go there again. We went to the international markets, borrowed 30 billion plus, and we ended up in trouble. So we create parallel systems that bypass the IMF. It's exactly what I'm saying here right now. Now look, we've been doing the same things and then when we finish, we end up having proofs because all those pilots and things spend the money, we don't see anything happen, and then we make excuses for why these things did not happen. Okay, look, why are we not going to, for instance, pick up 1D, 1F, okay, and try and make it work? It's a good thing to build down.
Because we have reportedly spent 541 million in that, affecting about 169 enterprises. And all these enterprises, almost all of them are struggling.
Yes. So, and that's government money.
And they are asking, how do they fit into this?
How?
What next from here?
Why? Why are we not going to pick them up and connect them? All right? And let me say something. we don't have time to go through this, but I'm just going to make broad points. Back in 2010, okay, we came up with Atimani with a rubric. And in development policy, we have showstoppers and facilitators. Showstoppers, and I'm using the ordinary term, when we are talking consulting, we use different terms, but for the public, showstoppers are things that if you don't have, nothing will happen. All right? If they are not there, forget it. Nothing will happen. And then we have facilitators. If you don't have them, something can happen, but if they are present, things will be fast. Okay? Showstoppers. If you don't have water, all right, nothing will happen. All industries need water. If you don't have energy, nothing will happen. If you don't have good roads and telecommunications, nothing will happen. If you take health, health is crucial, but health is a facilitator. Okay, there are people in the rural areas that never go to.
Are you saying take care of these?
Can I
take care of these? Wait. Take care of these, and a 24-hour economy
will take care of itself.
Will take care of itself.
But let me wrap up on that.
Will spring up automatically.
Let me wrap up on that. See, again, that's why I said there's no time. You are talking about 6 billion. Okay, I can tell you because we did this work when Aqua Vitens Run came here. Okay, and what we found out at that time was that we needed $2 billion plus 4 years to provide water to all the spaces and homes within Accra and Tema. Listen, $2 billion. And if you had all that $2 billion today, you need 4 years to do that because what? You dig trenches, lay pipes, that kind of thing. What I'm saying is this. If you take water, if you take roads, rail, and if you take energy alone, you will need more than 6 billion.
Right.
All right? If you take construction, today, go to East Legon, go to West Legon. And I'm using them because they are supposed to be the higher places. If you leave the main road, the road right next to it is a dirt road.
That's right.
Okay. So if you go, the roads that lead to go to industrial area today. Go to Tema. Yeah. The places where we are doing production.
Yes.
Where you are taking the time. The roads are not good.
Right.
And here's the thing. Let me finish, please. I mean, take the 6 billion, okay? Take wait. I know you are going to say it's there, but I beg.
No, it's not that it's there. None of this is tackling the issue.
Let me finish.
All right.
I said, take the 6 billion. Give yourself, say, we are going to do roads, we're going to do water, and we're going to strengthen our energy so that every rain doesn't lead to light off.
Thank you.
That alone for the 4 years will help us.
Yes,
the rest will take care of it.
And you don't need to set up an authority.
You don't need to set up an authority to do that. You don't need new laws to do that.
One. 24-hour economy cannot be a substantive policy. It is rather an effect of a substantive policy.
Of good policy.
And so if somebody produces a document and call it a 24-hour economy, it's problematic.
But somebody can have Ghana Beyond Aid as a
Ghana
policy.
Beyond Aid with substantive policies, which would eventually have the effect of a 24-hour economy. If you go to Broadway or Times Square in New York, nobody tells a shop owner there to open his shop at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. They do it because they have customers. If you go to Dubai, nobody tells a shop to operate at 1 a.m. They do it because they have customers, people patronizing. And so 24-hour economy cannot be a substantive policy. It is quite problematic when you set off that I want to operate a 24-hour economy with the view to turning our economy around. Because in economics, it is simply demand and supply. And so 24-hour economy can only be an effect and not a substantive policy. Let me move on, my brother. You see, there ought to be continuity. We are wasting the taxpayers' money. If it was our own business that we're running as politicians, is this how we're going to run it? When you come into office, you've seen Ghana Beyond Aid. Already taxpayers' money have been expended. And you see, you are jumping to go and create a new one, right? And that new one, the fulcrum of it, the philosophy is that if you operate 24 hours, I'll give you certain incentives. And so if I open Joy FM, until Joy FM and other media houses started, there was GBC. You and I know that GBC will start at 5 p.m. And
5 a.m.
No, 5 p.m.
Okay.
They used to start at 5 p.m. and close at 12 midnight.
They start in the morning and close, and then they later start in the evening.
Yeah. But they run 24 hours because there's the market, there's competition. If they don't keep it, people will not come there again, they'll move elsewhere. So there's a problem. Samson, you don't have time, but let me hit it this way.
They want to induce the market.
No, you can't do that. There's first demand and there's supply. You can't put the cart before the horse. We have one problem. Our problem is that, Samson, let's do two things. One, government should use its budget. Government should use its budget to instigate economic growth in Ghana through patronizing made in Ghana products. If there is anything that you want to procure, unless it is not in Ghana, then you can procure from outside. But procure it from here. Two is this. Let's amend our Procurement Act to ensure genuine competitive bidding. That is the way to...
We don't need to amend the...
Well,
it's already there.
Delete the sole sourcing from there.
Which has become the norm.
The loophole has become the norm.
Even the conditions for sole sourcing, if we follow it, there's nothing wrong. You don't need to delete it.
Well, Samson, thank you very much. Thank you very much. But I'm looking at the time constraints for procurement.
Okay.
Given the tenure of office, of a government. Look, we don't have time. We can have a whole period to discuss.
You have a whole one on this.
But I'm saying that if you look at the time constraints, right, in terms of our procurement, even sole sourcing, the minimum time frame turnaround is about 3 to 6 months. Competitive tender, you are looking at in excess of 12 months. These are the challenges, right? And when you fix this in the tenure of office of a government, then you have a problem. And so we have to begin to think through our Procurement Act in that circumstance. But I'm saying that once we have a genuine competitive procurement system, it will unleash the talent of Ghanaians to do very well in the private sector. Once that is done, nobody needs to go for a document called 24-hour economy or Ghana Beyond 8. Government can actually invest its resources in creating the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. That is all businesses need.
It's 24-hour economy and accelerated export. Hold on. Vera will make a brief comment from the policy standpoint, briefly. Then you will finish with us. Hello, Vera. Vera. Okay. So you, yes, let's they raise issues.
They raise a lot of
issues.
Yes,
almost all of them.
Yes.
Yes, what do you say?
I mean, first of all, what I'll say is, just to start off, let's take the cynicism out of the conversation. Because a lot of times I see a lot of cynicism.
We all said good idea.
So let's no, but the reason why I say that is that there's a lot that I'm also hearing that seems to suggest that you haven't necessarily read all the books. So for instance, what he was talking about, the procurement and all of that, that's completely covered in the book. If you go to Go 24, that's part of what it actually does. So if you went there, you would see it and you wouldn't have to say it over here.
Speak to it.
No, I mean, he's talked about, he said exactly what is in there. I take the point that Prof raised, which is the fact that it would be good to acknowledge all the, documents and all the lessons that have been learned
and the progress we've made and how this builds.
And I take that point, and I think it's important as a country we learn to acknowledge, what has been done and what we are building on. And yes, there's a lot that we are building on, but there's a lot also that is different. You asked, for instance, what is the difference between this and 1D, 1F? Even the way money.
I thought you had done that already. You had done the distinguishing, talking about where it was narrow, where it was supposed to be broad.
I want to give a very specific example.
Okay.
The way you take money, you get money because when you think about financing businesses, there's an infrastructure bit which we've talked about. How do you get the bulk infrastructure in there? And that's where GIF comes in and all of that. Part of the problem, with businesses, a lot of these businesses was the fact that they had to also build the infrastructure that they need. Then you have the enterprise financing. Under 1D, 1F, essentially what government did was to subsidize loans, right, for the businesses. What we are doing is to identify what are the constraints, what makes loans expensive, what accounts for the the short tenor of loans, what accounts for the fact that the lending is highly collateralized in Ghana, and then put in place structures that ensures that you take away these constraints so you don't have to subsidize it, but you reduce the cost of lending. That's what we do.
About Ghana Development Bank.
I'm working. Yes, of course, I know Ghana Development Bank.
Okay, what I'm saying is that we have done that already.
No, you have. We haven't done that. You haven't done that.
Hold on. So
what have we done?
Today, as we speak, they are under probe in their criminal situations. We've written about it at the money.
I know. Yes.
Okay? All right. Now, why are you reinventing that wheel?
Nobody is reinventing that. That's why I'm saying you have not read the book. If you read the book, please put the funding this on it. If you read the book, you realize. No, you haven't read it. If you read it, you realize.
I haven't read it.
Let me just show you. Let me show you this. I just need to show you.
No, you are not getting me.
No, I am getting.
We have all read it, but
no, you haven't. You haven't.
So what you are proposing today?
Wait. No, you have not.
Yes.
Let me show you. You have not.
Okay. What's the point?
You have not. In the point that if you look at the way the money gets to businesses, DBG is right in the center there. Mm-hmm. We've spoken to DBG. We've had extensive discussions with DBG and figured out how do we ensure that we implement all the things that they need to do, and also actually even add some things to it to ensure that money gets to the beneficiaries. Now you tell me here that do you know DBG? As if we've not talked about DBG.
You said we should take out the cynicism, but
yes.
You didn't even finish hearing me.
No, I heard you. You said, do you know DBG?
Bro, we are not arguing. We are debating.
I think the point is making that this kind of analysis informed also the setting up.
Exactly.
You don't do that. DBG we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars. It's suffering today different problems, which if you don't solve, cannot do these things you are talking about.
No, but you see, you don't start that with, do you know DBG?
No, you see,
of course.
Again,
I will not be sitting here discussing this if I don't know DBG.
So you put money in, in a development bank.
So but let's move on.
And then you dish it out for who to go and do 50 companies.
No, relax. But we can talk about the substantive things. And we've done a lot of thinking. What I'm saying is that you don't get up, you don't start up by saying, do you know DBG?
What are you doing with big promise?
Okay, I'm sorry, gentlemen, I'm sorry, but our time is up. Unfortunately, our time is up. Gentlemen, sorry, Kofi, sorry. Our time is up. And this show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and close as a partner. And my outfit that you have been talking about, gentlemen, sorry. And my outfit that you have been talking about is by Kunati Clothing, 0244 676732, 0244 676732. Just call them and you will get a nicely done outfit for you. It's also brought to you by MTN. Everywhere you go. Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care service provider for 31 years. DBS Industries, roofing, Papa Fie, My Way Insurance. Dial *165# on MTN to join My Way today. Flamingo Paints, simply superior. Syntex Tanks is strong as tough. And Activa Insurance, they are proud to be associated with your number one show, Newsfile. Now, my guests have been Vera Abena-Addo of the CDD. Unfortunately, we couldn't connect with her for the last topic, Kofi Bento, and Abdul Nasser Alidu, Head of Strategy and Programs at the 24-Hour Plus Secretariat. Nana Ejay Bafo Ewa MP Nshire South. Menshia South. Yes, the guy will come and hit me. Of course, Professor Bokwing. He's a professor of finance and economist at the University of Ghana. Have a good afternoon. I'm Samson Lardy Anyenini.